If you understand English but still hesitate to speak, this video is exactly what you need. This is not a grammar lesson. This is not memorizing rules. In this video, you'll listen to real-life English the way people actually speak in the US, Canada, and the UK. You'll hear natural conversations, everyday sentences, and simple expressions that native speakers use daily. By watching this till the end, you'll improve your listening, you'll start thinking in English, and you'll feel more confident speaking without translating in your head. This video is important because fluency doesn't come from books. It comes from exposure, from stories, from real situations. So relax, listen carefully, and let real English become natural for you. It was early morning, and the city was already awake. Cars were moving fast, people were walking with coffee cups in their hands, and the sound of traffic filled the air. I stood near the window for a moment, watching everything. This city never really slows down. I checked the time and grabbed my jacket. I had somewhere to be. As I stepped outside, the air felt cool and fresh. I walked down the street, past a few familiar faces, and headed toward the subway station. While waiting, I noticed people around me. Some were on their phones. Some were talking quietly. Others just stared ahead, lost in their thoughts. A guy next to me sighed and said, "Long day ahead." I nodded and replied, "Yeah, looks like it." The train arrived, and everyone stepped inside. It was crowded but quiet. That usual morning silence. I stood near the door, holding the rail, listening to small conversations around me. Nothing fancy, just real English, the kind people actually use. At the next stop, a woman walked in and asked, "Is this seat taken?" "No, go ahead," someone replied. Simple, natural. When I got off, the street was already busy. People rushing, shops opening, coffee places packed. I walked into a small cafe and ordered breakfast. The cashier smiled and said, "Same as usual." "Yeah," I replied. I sat by the window and took a sip of coffee. This moment felt calm. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message popped up, "Are you on your way?" I typed back, "I'll be there soon." After finishing up, I paid and stepped back outside. The sun was higher now, and the city looked brighter. When I reached the office building, I took a deep breath before going in. Another day, more conversations, more chances to speak. Inside, people greeted each other casually. "Morning. Hey, what's up? How was your weekend?" I replied naturally, without thinking too much. The words just came out. During a break, I sat with a coworker. He asked about my plans. "I'm thinking about learning something new this year," I said. He nodded and replied, "That's always a good idea." Later, I joined a small meeting. Nothing formal, just discussion. Everyone shared opinions, agreed, disagreed, listened. I noticed something important. Nobody was speaking perfect English. They were speaking real English. Short sentences, clear thoughts, confident tone. As the day went on, I felt more comfortable, less nervous, more natural. In the afternoon, I stepped outside for a short walk. The noise, the movement, the energy. I passed a park where people were sitting, talking, laughing. Kids were playing. Someone was walking a dog. I thought about how language fits into life. Not as rules, not as grammar, but as connection. I headed back inside, ready to continue the day, ready to listen more, speak more, and move forward. The afternoon moved faster than I expected. Emails came in one after another, and short conversations filled the gaps between work. Someone walked by and asked, "Did you see the update?" I looked up and said, "Yeah, I just checked it." Nothing complicated, just clear, everyday English. Later, I grabbed a cup of coffee and stood near the window again. Outside, people were still moving nonstop. This city didn't care if you were tired. A coworker joined me and said, "I'm thinking about leaving early today." I replied, "That sounds like a good plan." We talked for a few minutes about random things. Weekend plans, traffic, weather. No pressure, no thinking about grammar, just talking. When the workday started slowing down, the office felt quieter. Keyboards clicked, phones buzzed occasionally. I packed my bag slowly, not in a rush. I felt comfortable. That feeling came from understanding and being understood. As I stepped outside, the sky had started changing colors. The evening air felt different, softer. I walked toward the station, passing people heading home. Some looked exhausted, some looked relaxed. On the train, a couple across from me were talking about dinner. One said, "Let's just grab something quick." The other replied, "Yeah, I don't feel like cooking." Real life, real English. I got off at my stop and walked through my neighborhood. Lights were on in apartments. Music played softly from somewhere. At a crosswalk, someone asked, "Is this the right way to Main Street?" I pointed and said, "Yeah, just keep going straight." They smiled and said thanks. I reached home, dropped my bag, and sat down for a moment. The day had been long, but it felt smooth. I checked my phone. A few missed messages. Nothing urgent. I replied calmly, one by one. Short replies. Clear words. Later, I stepped outside again, just for a short walk. The night had settled in. The streets were calmer now. I passed a small group of friends talking and laughing. Their conversation flowed naturally, jumping from one topic to another. I kept walking, listening, noticing how English sounded different at night. Slower, softer, more relaxed. I stopped for a moment, took a deep breath, and looked around. This was the kind of English people actually lived with. Not perfect, just natural. The next morning arrived quietly. No rush, no noise, just a soft light coming through the window. I woke up feeling rested. Not because the day ahead was easy, but because my mind felt clear. I got ready, made a simple breakfast, and sat at the table for a moment. I didn't check my phone right away. I just sat there, thinking. Everyday English isn't about sounding smart. It's about sounding real. Later, as I stepped outside, I noticed how familiar everything felt. The same streets, the same sounds, but something inside me had changed. On the way, I ran into a neighbor. He smiled and said, "Morning." "Morning," I replied. That was it. No long talk, no effort, just connection. I realized something important right then. Fluency doesn't come from learning big words. It comes from moments like this. Short exchanges, simple responses, confidence without thinking too much. As the day moved forward, I spoke when I needed to. I listened when it mattered. I didn't rush my words. I didn't hold back either. By the evening, I felt calm again. Satisfied. I sat down, looked back at the day, and smiled. Not because everything went perfectly, but because communication felt natural. And that's the goal, to understand, to respond, to be present. English isn't a test, it's a tool, and when you use it every day, it becomes a part of you. I turned off the light, leaned back, and let the quiet take over. Tomorrow would bring more conversations, more chances, and more growth. And this time, I was ready.